Welcome back to the Pioneer Sideline. I'm Kelsie Metzgar with your National Sports Report. The World Series is in full swing right now as the Boston Red Sox took a 3-2 lead over the St. Louis Cardinals. St. Louis jumped out to an early 2-1 advantage over Boston, but Boston has battled back the past 2 games and now takes the series back to Boston for Game 6 on October 30th and a possible Game 7 if necessary. Red Sox first baseman David Ortiz is batting over .700 for the series. He has 8 hits and 11 at-bats. As the season continues, the Steelers continue to struggle. Last week, the team suffered another loss, and this time it was at the hands of the Oakland Raiders. This brings their overall record to 2-5 on the season. Nothing can seem to really go right for the team this season. They have a large negative turnover differential, plenty of missed opportunities, bad execution on special teams, offense, defense, and coaching, depending on the game that you watch. Old players are making mistakes, rookies are making mistakes, and once again, they have been the victim of the injury bug. Their season schedule is not getting any easier either, as upcoming games feature the Patriots, the Packers, the Bengals, and the Ravens. And while the Steelers are having mid-season struggles, the Penguins are having some early season success. The team is now 8-4 on the season with 16 points. They picked themselves back up with a win against the Hurricanes after they had 3 straight losses. Penguins center Sidney Crosby leads the league in points, and Marc-Andre Fleury leads the league in shutouts is a league leader in shutouts and wins. And that's all I have for your national news report this week. Let's send it back over to Chris.
Kelsie, you look at the Steelers. They've been struggling a little bit this season, and you mentioned that there is the injury bug. How much does that really affect them on the offensive line alone? Oh, my goodness.
The offensive line, Chris, is huge. You take a look at them, and they just can't get it together. Their injury problem each season, it's not just this season, it is season after season after season. Marquise Pouncey, and, they lost David DeCastro the other day. And I just think that without a solid offensive line, I don't know how far they can go and how much more Big Ben can handle for that matter.
Now, Kelsie, you mentioned the Pens and the early success they've had at the beginning of this season. Do you really think it will carry them this year and finally maybe give them that edge they've been missing the last few years in the playoffs?
I do. I think that they have what it takes this year. I think they need to bump up their game a little bit. I think they need to be more of a physical team. And, you need to look at their physicality and how much that is going to help them in the playoffs. Not just almost they have like this pretty boy-esque kind of thing, which is great in the regular season, and you see the wins, but once playoffs come along, that's what they need. They need to be physical. They need to lay those hits down, and I think that will take them farther in the playoffs and maybe to Stanley Cup championship.
Thanks, Kelsie. Now, Phil Navatsyk joins us in studio to see how the men's basketball team will start off the year.
The Pioneers start their season on November 6th, and in the coach's preseason poll, Point Park was picked to finish 5th in the conference. But in all honesty, these polls really don't mean much, Chris. Last year was the first year for the Pioneers in the KIAC, so it's not like the coaches have a lot to go on when they make these votes. I could see this team finishing anywhere in this conference because it's so tough to know what to expect from them. We saw flashes of greatness last year, but there was no consistency. The only thing we know for sure is that Bob Rager's unit will light up the scoreboard, and if the past is any indication, so will their opponents. Another aspect of this team to pay attention to early is their chemistry. They're only returning 2 starters from last season in Matt Noska and Gabe McNeil. Losing all of those starters can be both negative and positive. The obvious downside is that you are losing 3 talented players that had major contributions to this team in seasons past. But I think in the long run, losing these guys will work out better for the Pioneers, as TJ Hetherington was an incredible scorer and always able to take over a game, but he also had a reputation for getting out of control. There were times where he would bring the ball down and not really run any sort of offense, and that can have a huge mental effect on the team as a whole. If they can find someone to run the point guard position in a more traditional manner this season and be more of a distributor, this team will be better off. Now let's go from the smallest man on the court to the biggest from last season, Babs Samoya. Babs was a very effective player down low, but the only problem is that this is not an offense that's meant to run with a traditional center. Coach Rager loves spreading the floor and getting the most of his points with threes and layups, not pounding the ball into the paint with a big man. The bottom line is that Babs was not able to get up and down the court fast enough to keep up. With more athletic big men such as Josh Polott seeing increased minutes this year, the Pioneers will be able to run things more fluidly. And if this team can mesh well early this season and avoid any midseason drama like they had with Josh Arnold last year, I think they have a legitimate shot at winning the conference. But Chris, the saying is always that defense wins championships, and they need more focus on that end of the court if they want to reach their goal.
Now, Phil, you mentioned defense wins championships. How do they really get that defense to get itself together and be more effective than it has been in seasons past?
The bottom line is that defense is all mental. We've seen with their athleticism, they're so effective on the offensive end of the court. So the big thing for the Pioneers is that they need to put more focus and more effort on the defensive end. They have the athleticism, Chris. It's just all a matter of effort at this point.
Now, how do you think these transfers are going to fit into the scheme? We saw last year Gabe McNeil took about 10 games or so to really get into the scheme, but once he got in, he was lights out. KIAC player multiple weeks. What do you think this is going to do for the team this year, Phil?
I think it sort of depends on the leadership of Gabe McNeil. Like you said, he was a transfer last year and came in, really didn't fit in that well early in the season. Remember, last year he started off the bench being a sixth man type of player, but as he got more comfortable, he was able to take over games, and I think he will be able to lead these transfers into getting more comfortable early in the season just based on his experience.
Thanks, Phil. After our final break, the Case of the Week crew comes by. Now that the NFL season is halfway through, who are your favorites to go all the way this year?